enough on that. I want to introduce Dave Romer, as Dave's going to share some great insight with us today that I know I'm excited to hear and take some notes on. So Dave has more than 30 years in franchising as a franchisor and a franchisee. So he knows both sides of the relationship there. And after several years as a restaurant operator and trainer, Dave began working with franchises as a business consultant for Dunkin', Arby's, TGI Fridays. He then purchased a business coaching franchise and began working with a small business owners in Columbus, Ohio, that marketplace. And after a couple of years, he decided to go back to the restaurant business and was director of franchise operations for Long John Silver's and Einstein's Brugger's / Manhattan Bagel brands. So today, Dave is an independent franchise consultant who helps people interested in purchasing a franchise determine which brands are the right fit, and then helps them through the due diligence and discovery process. His services are free to the client, as his fees are paid by the various franchise brands in which he works. So again, excited to hear from Dave Romer. I know we'll all take something away. I encourage you to take some notes. And what I'm looking to get out of today, I'd share is that, one, some insights into something I don't know much about, whether that's in how it could apply to me personally and professionally, and or ways that Dave or anyone on this call could be a good advocate and connection. And even if there are other people, I'd like to connect to Dave as well. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Dave Romer.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Thanks for the intro. Couldn't have written it better myself. Oh, wait a minute. I think I did. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Really looking forward to the networking portion of this after we go through this short presentation, and hopefully we get some questions. So I'm going to take much time because I know everybody wants to get to the networking piece of it as well as I do. Just to give you one other kind of bit of background on me is I do what I do because one of my firm beliefs is that through learning, increasing our knowledge, increasing our skill sets, we are just better able to realize our dreams in life, whatever those dreams happen to be, right? And I think everybody here can appreciate that because obviously you believe in education. You're all members of Beta Gamma Sigma and outperformed pretty much everybody else that you went to school with. By the way, I was inducted from Stetson University in DeLand, Florida, in the MBA program. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about today was franchising because that's what I'm about. I believe that if I can help people learn about franchising, then if they are at all considering going into business for themselves, being their own boss, and by the way, 62% of Americans surveyed said that they would really like to be their own boss someday. And then maybe franchising is a way for them to do that. And maybe I can help them. And frankly, help them avoid some of the mistakes that I made when I bought my franchise. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So just briefly, this is kind of the list of topics that we'll discuss today. Just a brief history, a couple of fun facts about franchising. And then, what is the franchising industry? What's it all about? How big is it? Some of those types of things. Some of the misconceptions about it. Some of the things that are going on in the franchising industry today that, frankly, I don't particularly care for, and I'd like to see changed because I think it could be better. And then, kind of some of the things that I do to help folks get into business for themselves. So does anybody want to take a wild guess, unmute yourself, and tell me who they think in the United States, who is responsible or credited, rather, with creating franchising, the franchise concept? It's a very well-known American.
I'm going to guess Howard Johnson.
Long before that. This man was a premier innovator and inventor in American history.
Benjamin Franklin.
You got it.
That was just a wild guess, honestly.
Yep, Benjamin Franklin. So in the 17th, so everybody knows he published Poor Richard's Almanac, And he cut a deal with this guy, Thomas Whitmarsh, because Franklin's in Pennsylvania, right? And he wanted to increase his distribution of the almanac. So he got this guy, Thomas Whitmarsh, to sign an agreement with him to publish it in South Carolina. And that was really the first franchise agreement. And then he soon expanded, into all these other places, all these other states and territories, and internationally, again, with Poor Richard's Almanac, expanding the distribution and publication to reach more and more people. I mean, the guy was brilliant, right? Everything else that he did is pretty well documented as well. The first modern day franchise is credited to Martha Matilda Harper. She created a hair care shop. And so the reason I say modern day is because a lot of the things that are included in today's franchise agreements, like training, specified, what kind of training you're going to get, how many field visits and what types of field visits are you going to get, advertising, those types of things. Franklin didn't include those specifics in his agreements, but Ms. Harper did. And so those things are still included pretty much in every franchise agreement, as well as some other things. And then, some other well-known types of things, Rexall Drugs. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're fairly large. I don't know if they're still around, actually, but they started franchising right after World War I. First food franchise was A&W. They were actually founded in 1919 in Lodi, California, and started franchising in 1925. So that's the first restaurant chain. And pretty much today, I would guess if I said the word franchise to you today, the first thing that would come to your mind is probably fast food. McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, something like that. Maybe a Howard Johnson's, which was also a restaurant, as well as a hotel motel. But it's typically the most well-known area. Franchising, as you'll see in a minute, is a lot bigger than the restaurant industry. 1950s saw a huge explosion of franchising. That's when McDonald's started franchising, when Dunkin' Donuts started franchising. In fact, towards the end of the decade is when the International Franchise Association was formed. Interesting story about that. You had Ray Kroc, who was not the founder of McDonald's, but he's the one that bought it from the McDonald's brothers and started franchising it and is responsible for growing the brand. The founder of Dunkin' Donuts, Bill Rosenberg, and several other well-known entrepreneurs were sitting in a room talking about what they were going to do to combat some of the government intervention that was beginning to happen in their industry, in the franchising industry specifically. And Bill Rosenberg, who is a well-known character, there are a lot of interesting stories and that are told about him, and they're all true, by the way. He finally just got fed up with the conversation, and this is true Bill Rosenberg. He stood up, took a $100 bill out of his pocket, slammed it on the table, and said, "Enough talk, more action. There's my $100. I'm in. Who else is in?" And there, the International Franchise Association was born. So that's kind of some of these guys that form these organizations were like that. So today, as I said, any industry really that you can think of, there's probably a franchise in it, and some that you might be surprised to hear. Huge industry, right? When you look at it from an industry standpoint, which the government does not really, there is no industry code for franchising. I think there should be, but 4,000 brands, $400 billion industry. You see all the things here on the screen that, the number of jobs and the amount of payroll it puts out, the GDP, I mean, gigantic numbers. Most people in the public view franchising in a positive way, right? Most people, 73% think it helps the economy, 78% think it helps their local economy, 81% have a favorable local view of franchises, and et cetera, et cetera. And, when you look at national brands, for example, McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts, they are national brands, but what most people don't realize is they are, in a lot of cases, family-run businesses. They are locally owned, small business owners, family-run in many cases. The they're just people like us that are out there trying to make a living and trying to serve the public. They're not necessarily a huge corporation. You think of McDonald's as a huge corporation, but the reality is their locations are all franchise owned. So you're not dealing with you're dealing with an individual business owner. Okay, so hot industries, and this has really changed, as you would imagine, over 2020 with the advent of COVID. But home services, anything related to home services is a very hot industry right now, and you can see all kinds of different types of franchises here: lawn care, pool care, repair and restoration, refurbishment, painting, handyman. There's a large company called Neighborly, actually just got bought out by a large PE firm. They own Mr. Handyman, Mr. Electric, and about 20 some other brands. And they're all in that home services kind of industry. Senior care and related, anything related to senior care is hot. And as you would think, it's hot because we're all getting older and the population of 65 and older grows every single day. And so there's a lot of senior care franchises, anything related to that. There are a couple of franchises that I deal with that they're more in the home modification business. So they install ramps and railings and chair lifts and all those types of things. And they're doing extremely well, because it's not just senior care that needs that type of modification to their homes, but disabled and veterans and those folks as well. So kind of an ongoing clientele pool for those types of businesses. Automotive and oil change, also very, very hot right now. There's a couple of really, really good brands. And, I think you may have read recently that there is a shortage of pre-owned or used vehicles. And so prices are soaring, and they're claiming it's part of this chip shortage on new cars. So people are buying more used cars. The reality is people are also keeping their vehicles a lot longer, taking better care of them, changing the oil more often, that type of thing. So these automotive and oil change is going to continue to do well. Pet care. Oh my goodness. There are a lot of pet care types of franchises out there, and think about this for a second. Pets are not pets, right? They're family members. And the amount of money that is spent on pets and keep, taking care of them, and doggy daycare type things, and, all that stuff, booming industry. Anything in medical. So there are different types of, some of them are like drips, where you actually get an IV. Those are doing very well because people are trying to stay healthy the older they get. There's a brand called Anodyne, which takes physical therapy, massage therapy, chiropractic, anything non-invasive from a pain management standpoint, and brings them all under one roof, as opposed to having all these different businesses all over the place. And they're doing extremely well too. And then QSR, obviously, that will always be hot. I think the thing that's happening there is it's kind of like the rich get richer, because the brands that have done well, and there are many, for example, that have done well. Give you pizza brands did extremely well last year, as you would imagine, right? Anything that's delivered that feeds the family. Chicken did the same thing. Wingstop was up like 22% last year, same store sales. That's phenomenal in the middle of a pandemic. And they opened over 130 restaurants in the middle of a pandemic. So
am I the only one who doesn't know what QSR is?
I'm sorry. Quick service restaurants, fast food.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Sometimes I get hung up in my own lingo. So they continue to do well in some cases, not all, but a lot of them. Popeyes did really, really well, and it's one of the fastest growing, hottest brands out there right now. So let's talk about some of the current trends in franchising. A lot of consolidation, as you see here. 343 brands are owned by 48 companies. There are multiple companies out there that are continuing to buy brands. So there's a company out there called Inspire Brands. They just recently, in the past 6 or so months, bought Dunkin' Donuts. They own Arby's, they own Dunkin', they own a taco brand, they own Buffalo Wild Wings. So there's a lot of that type of thing going on out there. Neighborly is one that they own about 23 brands, all in the home services. Kahala Brands owns about 30 different food brands. A lot of multi-unit or multi-brand companies out there, and it's continuing to happen more and more. There was one that just happened the other day, and I can't remember who it was. No, I'll think of it. Joint employer is something that's been going on. The National Labor Relations Board, or NLRB, several years ago rewrote the rules, and this is really impacting the franchise industry because now franchisors have to worry about how much support and what type of support they give their franchisees, because they could be making themselves liable as an employer when they're really not. The folks that work in these franchise locations work for the franchisee. And while the franchisor has control over standards and how things are supposed to be done, the reality is it's really the franchisee that controls whether or not that employee stays employed, and the type of training that they get, and the quality, and the type of management that they provide, and benefits, and all those other things. And so it's getting trickier and trickier. And a lot of what's going on in California with Prop 22, and what they're trying to do with Uber and some of the Uber and Lyft, right? You probably read about this, where these people are 1099 contractors, but California is trying to make them employees of Uber and Lyft. And it's really going to be interesting to see how this all plays out and how it disrupts not just Uber and Lyft, but the franchising industry, because it's bleeding over already, and it's going to continue. One of the unfortunate things that's going on, and it's been going on for quite a while now, is, like anything else, there's good franchisors and bad franchisors. And I have no problem calling out the bad franchisors, as you can see here. Two examples are 7-Eleven and Dickies. So the 7-Eleven, my issue with 7-Eleven is they are control, and that's part of the problem with this joint employer too, because 7-Eleven has got so much control over what their franchisees do, how they do it, when they do it. It's incredible. There's actually a franchisee in Phoenix, Arizona, where he does not have control over the thermostat in his store. It's controlled out of the main office in Dallas, Texas. That's crazy, but it's reality. And franchisors are getting away with this. So, it's a bit of a problem. Dickey's Barbecue is another one where they treat their franchisees like employees. They're very, very strict about what you do, when you do it, how you do it, and all kinds of things. And sometimes that can be good, but they're kind of overbearing. And they have a very high turnover rate. Their turnover rate for franchisees is about 22%. And that includes people that sell or just don't renew their franchise agreements, or get thrown out of the system by Dickies for some legal infraction in the franchise agreement. 22% is astronomical. Average is below 5% for the industry. So Dickies has really got some issues. There's others out there as well.
Can I ask a question on that?
Please.
So with those statistics on the 5%, would you say that when people do become a franchisee, they tend to continue doing so?
Yes, over 90% of franchisees plan to or already have renewed their franchise agreement for an additional term. Yes.
And I'm
well
sure you'll
over
get
80%.
I'm sure you'll get into some of the, barriers to entry or technical, like how do people actually entertain the opportunity and get into things. But that's a pretty high retention rate at that point once you're in, it seems.
Yes, I agree. It's very high. It's one of the things I love about the industry, and there's lots of reasons for it. Franchising is, here's how I describe it. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. Your franchisor is your partner, supposed to be your partner. And in most cases they are, and they do a really good job, and view their franchisees as investors in their brand, because that's really what a franchisee is. So as I say here, most brands get it. There's always a few that don't. So a couple of things that are a reality in the franchise industry, and some of the things that are happening from a legal standpoint. The controlling document in any franchise is called the FDD. It's the Franchise Disclosure Document. It is required by the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and although all of these categories listed here are required, the level of detail is not. It varies because those requirements are pretty loose, and there's some work being done to tighten that stuff up. A lot of it is to really put some pressure on these bad acting franchisors. So the key things in an FDD that I really make sure that people focus on are the first one is highlighted there, the item 19, which is the financial performance of the average franchise location. And again, there's varying levels of disclosure here. So some brands will really not put anything in there. That others will put in, here's our average unit volume. Here's how many are above that, how many are below that, et cetera. And then others will really get into go as far as they'll actually put some representative profit and loss statements in that item 19, so that you can see what is a typical or average franchisee, make from an operating standpoint. So there's varying levels. I know a franchise brand, for example, that actually puts, if you go to their website, you're going to find about 12 different store P&Ls, unidentified. You're not going to know what store it is, but they will have actual store level operating profit and loss statements on their website, which is the only brand I know that does that, which I think is great. And then the other thing is the item 21, which is the financial statements of the franchisor. Those are the two key things that I want people to really pay attention to, because you want to make sure that, number one, you're going to be able to make money and feel comfortable with that. And number two, how healthy financially is your franchisor? You don't want to sign a 10-year agreement and have your franchisor going, chapter 11 or chapter 7 after a couple of years. That's obviously a bad thing. Okay. Lots of different, and again, I one of the things that I do when I work with people is I have contacts that I can give them. So I have somebody in St. Louis, for example, that works. She's a wizard when it comes to helping you figure out the best way for you to finance your business. So there's lots of different ways, as you see here. There's obviously savings accounts and various types of savings accounts. One of the big ones is why I have it. I'll come back to this one, the one that's in red here, the 401k IRA capitalization strategy. I'll come back to that. Lines of credit, home equity lines, SBA 7A loans, third-party lenders, friends, et cetera, and then portfolio loans. So a lot of times people will have some stock. You don't have to cash in your stock. You can actually take a loan out on that and use that to finance your franchise and still maintain ownership of the stock, which is kind of nice. But the biggest one I find is this 401k IRA strategy. It's called ROBS. It stands for Rollover Business Strategy. And what happens is, I won't go into the details, but it allows you to take the money that's in your IRA or your 401k. So if you're a corporate executive and you've got a 401k with several $100,000 in it, you can actually take all that money, roll it over into your own retirement plan that your company owns. And you can do that 100% of it, no penalty, no taxes, because you're really not taking it out. You're not cashing out your 401k. You're simply rolling it over into a retirement plan that you own, you manage, and it's a pretty interesting strategy. And a lot of people finance their business that way. I did that. Worked out really well. And it's pretty cheap to do. There's companies that specialize in helping folks do this for like $5,000, which is not bad. So why do I think franchise is the best way to business ownership? If you go into business for yourself and you create your own company, I think that's fantastic. I think you are, you're a genius for being able to do that, right? You're very creative and obviously very intelligent and hardworking and all those good things. Not everybody's like that. Most people in this world are better at following a system than they are at creating a system. And that's the beauty of franchising, right? If you're going to franchise, you're creating this system that others will follow. And so it allows people, as I said, to go into business for themselves, but not by themselves. You've got that partner. You've got someone that's there to help you, that's going to support you, that's going to give you advice and tell you, hey, you're doing this really well. If you did this, you'd do even better, and they'll help you figure it out. It's a proven system. It's typically unless it's a startup franchise, it's a system that's established. They've got name brand recognition. If you create your own brand, it's going to take you a while. It could take you years to create name brand recognition sufficient to support that business and really do well. You go into a franchise, it's already there. As I said, you get initial training, you get operations support, you get marketing, all of those things that you would otherwise have to do for yourself. And you get a built-in group of peers, other franchisees that you can network with and ask advice from and share best practices. And, you don't really get that by yourself unless you're part of a networking group or you have a business coach or something like that, which, by the way, you pay for. You ramp up faster typically because you've got that help in the development process. And so you get your business up and running quicker. As I said, name brand recognition and financing. It's easier to get financing for a franchise than it is an independent business because it's a proven concept. So, there's all of those benefits. So essentially what I do is really pretty simple. I provide qualified leads to franchisors. And the way that I do that is if someone wants to have a conversation or is interested in owning their own business and wants to explore franchising, they have a couple of different options. They can do all of that work on their own and go through and try to figure out what's the right franchise for them. Or they can work with someone like me. Either way, it's the same price, $0. And in terms of dollars, in terms of time, it's much different because, it's obviously going to take that person a lot more time to do it on their own as if they work with a consultant. And I will help them figure out what type of industry and business really is the best fit for them. I try to learn as much as I possibly can about folks. What do they like? What do they dislike? What are they good at? Let's talk about your experience, in your past jobs. What did you really enjoy doing? What did you not like doing? What do you feel like you were really good at? What do you think that you weren't so good at? What kind of hours do you want to work? Are you looking at Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? Are weekends okay? Are you all right with working nights? How much money do you want to make? How much money do you have to invest? All of those different things. And there's more as well. Really trying to create a profile of this person. And then I have about a list of about 300, maybe 350 franchise companies that I work with. And I'll go through that list and I'll compare. And I'll make sure that I find them brands that fit all of those different things about them. And so then I will make sure that, and this is really important, I'll make sure that that brand actually has territory available where they want to do business. Because if they're in Denver and they want to go to, I don't know, let's say Teriyaki Madness, which is a Denver brand, they're probably all sold out in Denver. Well, it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good to talk about Teriyaki Madness because there's nothing available. So, that's pretty important. I'll then come back to them and we'll talk about a couple of brands, not a lot, maybe 3 or 4. And hopefully they get 1 or 2 out of that they feel like they want to explore further. And so I'll make the connection with the brand. I'll help them and walk them through that process. I'll connect them with a franchise attorney. I'll connect them with somebody to help them with financing. I will talk with them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to make sure that everything is going well. What questions do you have? Is the franchisor working with you? How are you feeling with regard to that? If they're getting cold feet, I try to understand why they're getting cold feet and help them through that process. And a lot of folks just drop out at whatever point. It's about a 1 in 6 ratio once you get into the process. About 1 out of every 6 actually ends up signing a deal. And that's how I get paid. People that sign the deal, they pay an initial franchise fee, and then the franchisor pays me a commission. So that's pretty much how it works. One of the things that I do, maybe different than some other franchise consultants, is because I have an operations background, I really focus in on what kind of support is this franchise going to give you after you sign on the dotted line, because they're not all created equal. The other thing is I will make sure that they don't have the same experience that I did when I got into franchising, that when I became a franchisee, because even though I had been in the industry, I still made a lot of mistakes. And I ended up going into the wrong business for me with the wrong brand, and it was a disaster. And so it's kind of my mission in life to make sure that I help people avoid those mistakes and not get into that situation. Obviously, it's a very sensitive issue for me. So, I love the industry. I love franchising. Again, I say it's the best way, I think, to go into business for all those reasons I stated. And that's pretty much it. That's all I got. What questions does everybody have?
Well, Dave, first of all, thank you. Great presentation. And I could kick off a question here, and I know we'll get into having a chance for everyone to introduce themselves a little bit further and just make sure we all know what everyone does, and we'll stay connected after the fact too, and have a follow-up. And some people already added me on LinkedIn. I shot a couple LinkedIns out, so that's good. So I know a few people that have a franchise, and one of them is it's called Lime Painting. I think it's a Colorado based. I think it's a pretty new franchise, Lime Painting. And so my friend, he already has a franchise. But when I was thinking of connections, would that even be someone where, if you spoke to him, that now you have the connection with, he's not the franchisor, but he is a franchisee within a newer company. And then I wonder, maybe he knows people that were interested in that same one. Like, do you ever talk to people that are current franchisees for connection purposes?
Yes, sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do. So there's three basic types of people that I work with. The first one might be a current franchisee. They obviously are, in most cases, pretty high on the franchise industry, so that's a good thing. And a lot of them will want to diversify and get into a completely different industry. Especially, as like a lot of restaurant brands, for example, took a big hit in COVID. And so a lot of those folks are trying to find something that's more COVID proof, more pandemic proof, and so that they can kind of hedge their bets, right? And so that's a possibility. The other folks I talk with are people that are unemployed and are just, gotten laid off or whatever for the fifth time, and are done with getting laid off, and, just going to go work for themselves. And then the other folks that I talk with are folks that are still employed, probably director, VP level in a corporation, and they're getting into their mid to late 50s, and they're thinking about, what am I going to do for retirement? How am I going to set myself up? Because there's a lot of franchises out there, Matt, that are what I would call semi-absentee or even fully absentee, that they can buy now and then just kind of own it for a few years, and 5 years later, now they've built it up, and they're able to replace their corporate income and benefits and all that, and so they can afford to retire and have something to go to.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you. I'm sure other people have questions. I'll let someone else
Hope so.
in here.
I couldn't have been that thorough.
I do have one for you, Dave. I've been in the construction industry for quite a long time, and I've seen various franchises from plumbing, electrical, that kind of thing. And most of them, you've got to have someone with a master's license. How do you work through that when you don't have one yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. So there's a couple different ways that you can do that. One is and this is probably the more common, most franchises are not necessarily looking for someone who's going to own and operate. They're looking for a business person, someone with business experience, who would then hire people with a master's license to do the actual work. And that person might even be a small equity owner in that business. I know that I always looked at folks in the restaurant business. We had a lot of people that didn't have any restaurant experience, but they had a lot of money. Well, I don't want those people in the business unless they have an experienced operator who's let's say a 10% partner. so that they're not going to walk away tomorrow. That's pretty much how it's done. Obviously, there's a lot of training that happens. And so some brands will actually help you with the training and the licensing, and that's part of the initial startup of the business. But mostly it's you bring in a small equity partner.
Okay. And are most of these, you just pay your fee every year or every however often that it's required to the franchisor? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so every franchisor has what they call an initial franchise fee, and they range anywhere from, let's say, 25 to 50,000, and it's a one-time fee, and then you have royalties on your sales after that. But that typically includes initial training, so they'll get you trained in the brand, and you and a couple of other people usually is included in that, and then they will assist you with getting your location up and running. Obviously, the startup costs beyond that are going to vary by industry, right? So a service business is going to be a lot less than a brick and mortar, like a restaurant or an oil change or something like that, because you've got leasehold improvements and equipment and all those kinds of things. But there's a lot of franchises you can get into for under 100,000 all in.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Looks like we had a chat question there from KG. If Dave, you just want to answer that one for us there, if you can see it there.
What other positions that are COVID proof? What other options? Well, anything in the service business is done pretty well, even through COVID. So a lot of those electrician, plumber, handyman type things, anything in the home cleaning business, window blinds, window replacements. Brian, you were talking about construction. So there's brands that do kitchen remodeling or kitchen refurbishing. And so anything in that home service business is going to continue to do well, because people are spending more time in their homes and more money on their homes. People are spending money on their garages, believe it or not, doing the floors and reorganizing. And so there's like Hello Garage, for example, is a franchise based in Nebraska, I think. And, they'll come in addition to doing the coating on the floor, they've got a system to help you organize in your garage, so it's not an absolute mess, right? Because the thing they say is people's garages are now their front doors. Nobody uses their front door anymore. They come in through the garage. Interesting.
Looks like we had a follow-up question in the chat from KG. Was what about real estate franchises?
Yeah, I don't really deal with any real estate franchises, but obviously, real estate brokerages are franchises, Remax and all the others pretty much, Century 21, they're all franchises. So, you could certainly do that if that was what you wanted to do.
Good stuff. Why don't we, if it works, we'll take kind of that pause point to just have everyone have a chance to again say who they are, perhaps if that works for you. Yeah.
Listen, so let me just finish up real quick and say thank you. It was an honor and a pleasure to be able to present and talk to you guys today, you folks. I just appreciate your attention and your time.
Hey, thanks, Dave. And I might contact you after this meeting.
Okay, sure.
Well, great. And so I would love to hear briefly from those of you that have microphones or in the chat or whatever and that are still with us. Perhaps you could just say who you are, where you got inducted to BGS, what school, what you do for currently, and maybe even the biggest takeaway you had from the presentation today.
Yeah, I'll go if no one else is speaking up yet. So hey, Herb Miner, I actually own my own business. I started my IT cybersecurity company in 2009 here in the Denver area. I was inducted into BGS in 2010, University of Houston. So I actually finished up my MBA after I moved to Colorado. I finished the rest of it online. So I own my own company already, very successful. And I'm actually, one thing that COVID made me think about was diversifying my business ownership. So that's why the whole franchise concept is kind of interesting to me in a way to start up another business. In addition to the one, 2, 3 I already own. So I'm kind of an entrepreneur already, but I'm really interested in the franchise model for my next adventure. What else did you want me to say, Matthew? Or is it Matt?
I think that was pretty good coverage there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want me to keep talking about myself, I will.
I'll briefly thank you, Herb, and I will say on KG's behalf, put in the chat, inducted at Fordham. Microphone wasn't working, but inducted at Fordham University, New York. There you go. Legal consulting and real estate. And KG is going to follow up with us on LinkedIn, Dave, so we can connect in that way too, by the looks of it. How about Brian? I see you might be unmuted. You mentioned being going to school and had gone to school in Wyoming. Is that right?
Yeah, I originally went to Kansas State University, got my bachelor's in business, majored in finance, and it took me about 12 years to get back for my master's at University of Wyoming. So I was inducted there in 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. Graduated there in 2013. So my background is primarily construction, commercial, and oil and gas. So been in construction, just 2 different industries, and then there's a lot of opportunity in each, and I was just trying to see what was out there to maybe leverage some of those things for myself instead of making other people a pile of money. So
that sounds like a good takeaway from today, and we appreciate that.
Papa Murphy's Pizza, and I've always been interested in that franchise. I don't know if you guys have any insight on that.
Defer to Dave there.
I don't have a lot of, I think they've gone through, I think a lot of positive changes over the years. Somebody that used to work for me was a partner in some Papa Murphy's, and he didn't speak real highly of them, but I think they've made a lot of changes and improvements. So, but specifics, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Appreciate it.
Well, hopefully their recipe is still good because I like them. It's pretty good pizza, I'll tell you that.
Blaze Pizza is the hot one.
Which one's that?
Blaze. That one's going through the roof.
Blaze Pizza. Look at it.
And from the franchising perspective, Dave, is that right?
Yeah, and their franchisees are doing pretty well too. I don't know what their volumes are or anything, but they're going through a huge growth spurt right now.
What would you say is it's a general question, but a good, whether you call it a break even or, just expectation around cash flow, knowing that when you're starting any business, there's, capital investment, sweat equity, you're in it for the long game to be self-employed, probably really enjoy what you do, and eventually perhaps even develop just a passive income, like you said, for a lot of folks. What do you see in terms of whether you'd call it a break even or a tipping point where folks feel like, all right, I'm really getting this thing off the ground? And I know it could vary, but just a general question there.
Yeah, I would say more along the lines of a percentage EBITDA. Store level EBITDA would be a better number to look at, because break evens are going to vary. They're going to be all over the board. So you can go from I would say anywhere from 10 to 35%, depending on the brand, depending on the industry. Service industries typically you might even be higher than that because there's basically no overhead. If you're working out of your house and all you really have is labor is your primary cost, you might see a 35 to 40% EBITDA. But most of them, like an oil change, for example, probably going to be in the upper 20s, which is pretty good return when you think about it.
And would you say, just a follow-up is, would you say that some may be more of a mom and pop feel, they just have their one and that works for them, whereas other folks may really have a portfolio, as you mentioned, being diversified amongst different businesses, and it's just to each their own?
Yeah, it's going to be all over the board. Understanding that franchisors really want multi-unit operators.
Okay.
They're trying to consolidate and have fewer franchisees because it's more cost effective for them to manage and service than with a lot of onesies and twosies.
Okay, I see that. Very cool. And for a Zoom meeting, I think these things they tend to work out about as good as you can get them. Sorry, Brian, did you have something to jump in there?
I think Thomas, we haven't heard from Thomas yet.
Yeah, I don't know if Thomas, are you with us there? Hopefully something there. Not sure. Tried to call out on the front side of it.
No, but I'll say I dialed into this kind of at the last minute. You know, an alert popped up. I'm like, oh, this might be interesting. And I appreciate it, Dave. I actually found it very interesting and super happy that I decided to join.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's very encouraging to hear. I mean, it beats the alternative, right?
Franchises are ideal for passive income. What do you recommend there?
Oh man, there's so many of them out there. It really is going to depend on what you want to do, you know, what industry you want to look in, and how much you have to invest. I'll give you an example. Here's the best one I can think of, and you're gonna think this is strange, but it's in the food industry. It's in the what's called fast casual, which is like a Chipotle, right, where you go in and you order and go to your table, but there's typically not a drive-through, and it's a Denver brand. It's called Teriyaki Madness. They have a very unique model that they created because they got a lot of interest from foreign investors who did not have a visa to come and actually work in the country, but they can invest. And so, but they didn't have anybody to operate the business. And so Teriyaki Madness created this operating arm that they call Restaurant Ninjas. And for a fee, they will do everything. You don't even need to be in the United States. They will develop the location. They'll find the location, develop the location, open it, run it. You'll get a P&L and a check every month. And for that, you're going to pay somewhere between, let's say, 2.7 and 3.3% of sales, which I look at as overhead, right? I compare that to typical restaurant overhead. If you're a multi-unit operator in the restaurant business, you're going to have a district manager, maybe a director of operations above them. You're going to have some office staff. You know, you're probably going to run about 5.5% overhead. So it's a pretty favorable number. Teriyaki Madness is actually subsidizing Restaurant Ninjas because the fees that they collect to do that don't pay for everything. So Teriyaki Madness is actually taking a portion of the royalties and subsidizing Restaurant Ninjas because for them it makes sense. It's a great way for them to get more franchisees and open more places, especially in today's world because I'm sure you've read all over the place that, you know, people are having a hard time getting employees. Restaurants are closing because, you know, I don't have people to work, that kind of thing. And as a franchise owner, you don't need to worry about that. That's Restaurant Ninja's problem. That's what you're paying them for. So pretty interesting concept.
That is interesting. Excuse me. Maybe a good wrap point, Dave, if you think that's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm happy to hear more from the people.
I'd like to hear more from other folks about, you know, the kinds of stuff that you do and the kinds of people that you work with and how you help them. And
I guess I should share something. I'm kind of the one here just moderating, but I may as well not hide the ball. So, you know, if you see my title, financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual, it's not a franchise, but it's kind of close. I'll describe it this way. You know, you've got these managing partners that have network offices, that they have the lease on the building and all the overhead, down to the managing directors in the districts. And so I'm an advisor in a district. And I think it works well for our clients because instead of their dollars going to expenses of the corporate office in Milwaukee, hires a, executive to run Denver, the managing partner is truly a business owner. So the expenses are lesser to the client. And then I'm truly a self-employed business owner myself. So, no boss, no salary. I have one W-2 employee as well on payroll. Early on it's commission only, and you need clients. And then over time you build residual income through your insurance and investment renewals. I also have a leadership role where I mentor, so I help recruit and attract talent under my unit, and I get paid overrides on their production, which is unlike, a multi-level marketing type thing where, I'm taking part of theirs. It's from the company itself. So they get theirs, I get mine through Northwestern Mutual. So the leadership role is really cool because I could probably make more money taking that day in my business back to seeing clients 5 days a week instead of 4. But it keeps me fresh, makes a big impact, because if I can help, the retention rate in my business is 7% to 5 years. And thankfully I'm going on 10. So if I can help someone stay in the business, it's a multiplying impact if they'll go get, their 500 or 1,000 clients that I would never have gotten. So I'm pretty blessed. The saying is that I'll retire. The stats say I'll retire at Northwestern, and that's a good thing. So that's a little bit about my business model, if you will.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun time. I'm a big fan of self-employment.
Yeah, I hear you. So I worked for Lockheed Martin for 20 years. That's why I was in Houston. I was working at Johnson Space Center down there, aerospace and defense. Finally I just got sick of it and said, I'm gonna do my own thing. Started up an IT business, which turned into a cybersecurity business because that's what's happening right now is ransomware attacks. And I don't think I could ever work for someone else again. I don't know why I did it for so long, to be honest with you. But I did get lucky to pay for my MBA though. So that was a good part, and then left. But yeah, I started this up in Denver, and we basically, our main market focus is the healthcare market. So we have a lot of, dental practices and group dental and oral surgery, and we handle all their IT and cybersecurity and HIPAA compliance. And it's good. It's been good. And that's kind of what we do. So if you know anyone, send them my way. I'm always open to referrals. And I'm kind of happy to get a little more involved in the chapter here, by the way. I've been meaning to for a while, and I'm kind of disappointed that I hadn't yet, because I can't think of anything better to hang out with a bunch of smart MBA people and learn from them.
Well, hey, we appreciate that. And no, I will say that the chapter was a bit dormant up until earlier this year for about a year or two. The guy that founded the chapter had kind of retired from that. He's in his mid 70s, maybe even early 80s. Bill Hinton, he founded the Denver chapter in 2001. And when I moved here, I became the treasurer in 2013. We had another president, Tom Smith, and he unfortunately passed away prematurely. So here I was with, taking over the chapter. And, we're looking, so we had a little event earlier this year, and Dave, I appreciate you kind of driving, hey, let's do another event. Let's get this thing going, because I've kind of been on that island of trying to reactivate. And so our hope would be to really have more momentum in a quarterly nature, in person, of course. Again, I've talked about whether it's just a social, we used to do happy hours, piggybacking on collegiate events like ethics, voices of experience at DU, lots of good stuff. And we're making a short list of the people that have attended to make sure you're kind of most in the know, because we need some momentum in the group for sure. And we're getting there.
Well, good for you. It's hard work, and so I appreciate you doing it.
As do I. Agree.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate you're doing this again, Matt, and appreciate you reactivating the chapter because, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I never, for years and years, I didn't even know networking existed, right? Until I bought my own business and realized, oh crap, I don't know anybody. I got to figure out how to meet people. And so started doing a lot of networking and it's fun. I enjoy it. So.
Yeah, if you could see me, I'm smiling because that's when I learned that if I don't network, my business isn't going to grow.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think, Dave, your approach too of, I think you took a great approach. I will say you set the standard because we want other people to kind of come in and do this too, and so on, where it's educational, interesting, and that little taste of, here's how I can help your contacts. And like, that's the right way to, network, if you will.
I agree. And I would love to hear, from other folks. I would love to hear what they do and have them come and do a presentation for us.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Even from a learning perspective, I mean, I just learned so much from people.
Yeah. And Herb, like you said, that it is the right group because we know everyone got a pretty good business degree and paid whatever $65 it was to be part of the lifetime membership. And you say, what is this thing again?
I've got the certificate on my wall.
As do I, actually, somewhere over here. So
It looks fancy.
I think I have to get a certificate. I don't remember where mine is.
Well, since you presented, we'll make sure that they print you a free new one somehow, framed.
Whatever, it's fine. Half my stuff. I've lived here for a year and a half, and half my stuff is still in boxes. Well, because we're renting, so a permanent place.
Yeah. Well, are you north too, Dave? North Denver? Or?
No, south. Castle Rock, Castle Pines.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my office is in Centennial by Inverness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so one of my dabblings is commercial real estate. So I own this commercial building in Lone Tree.
Oh, yeah.
My company's in it, and then I sublease. Well, not really sublease because I own it, but I lease out space to small professional services. So I have a small law firm in here, a small CPA firm, for example. So my office here in Lone Tree. I live in Castle Pines, so it's kind of funny. We're all down here in South Metro.
What part of Castle Pines, Herb?
I live in the Stonemont neighborhood.
I don't know where that is.
So it's they installed that big senior living facility
On Monarch?
Yeah, it's right there on the intersection of Castle Pines Parkway and Monarch.
Yeah.
But if you turn north on Monarch and kind of go into Castle Pines that way, Stonecroft is the second neighborhood on the left. It's one of the smaller neighborhoods, even though it's one of the older neighborhoods.
So we are maybe a half a mile from each other.
So this is what I say. If you've ever played golf at the Ridge.
No, I've not played there, but I want to.
Okay, you play golf on the Ridge, you tee off on the third hole, and you slice it, you could hit my house.
Yeah, we're less than a half a mile because I'm in the what is this called? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. The Hamlet.
Okay, yeah, I know where
Yeah,
that is.
and I can look out and across the street, and right behind the house across the street is number 4 tee box, that par 3.
Yeah, the Hamlet's got the big. You got the big entry, right, with the the gate. You've got a gate on yours, don't you?
Yeah, it's gated, and it's got that what you call it out front where I have to walk down to get my mail all the time.
Yeah, the mailbox. And I'm trying to think who I know in there because
Bunch of old people.
it is funny because the guy I know is an old guy. But for some reason, I just went blank.
That's pretty funny. We're that close. We should go down to Ziggy's and have coffee.
Yeah. Let's do that. But I'm always looking to to meet new people. It's just, I like to network. I used to not like to network till I learned that, hey, I got a network. So, being an engineer, so my undergrad's computer system engineering, and that's what got me into aerospace and doing software. But I got my MBA to kind of get out of being an engineer, and then I started an IT company, so I'm basically an engineer again. Kind of the way it works, I guess.
Working at the Johnson Space Center, that had to be, I mean, I know you didn't like having the boss and all, that had to be pretty cool.
That was pretty cool. And I got to be honest with you, it was, being on the space shuttle program, right? I was on the space shuttle program, working with astronauts. It was pretty cool stuff. And I'd still be there if that program didn't go away.
Mm.
And I actually, Steve Woolley, I don't know if you know Steve Woolley. I think he still lives in the Hamlet. But I actually relocated up here with Lockheed right before I told them to lay me off. And so working out at Waterton Canyon on, DoD programs and things like that, it just wasn't the same as working at Johnson Space Center. And so I quickly started to dislike, what I was doing every day. Whereas in Houston, I loved it. I just loved it.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I got stories, some I can't tell you about.
I know. It's funny when I finished my undergrad at University of Phoenix before I got the MBA, and obviously before it was done. And the guy that taught our project management class worked at Lockheed Martin on the east coast of Florida. And he used to say the same thing. We had, high level clearance, couldn't go to certain countries. There's actually a tourist attraction in Orlando called Splendid China. He was not allowed to go there.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, a program that I was on, it was the same thing. I couldn't go out of the country unless I had it approved on where I was going, and I had to give them an itinerary of what I was doing.
Right.
And then give them a report when I got back, have a debrief.
Yeah.
I didn't go out of the country.
You worked in the black section is what I think he called it.
I did on one of my DoD programs was, it wasn't 100% black. It was not GOZAR, it's SIBRS. So you can look it up, SIBRS. But I can't tell you about it, but you can look it up. It's not completely black. I can't tell you about it, but I can tell you look it up and you can read about it.
Right.
But it's a missile detection system.
Space-based
missile detection. And so this is what I tell people. Whenever you see in the news that they say North Korea did a missile launch, I know why they know that. I know how they know that. So it's pretty cool stuff. Good for the country.
That's cool.
Now, I am cool. I mean, we can talk about the franchising stuff. There's really two things that are going through my brain about it. My lovely spouse she got her degree from University of Texas, and it's a bachelor's in dental hygiene, but she doesn't really want to go back to working for a dentist. And since I've got like 100 dentists as my clients, I get it. I hate them all. I'm being sarcastic, kind of. And so the two things is I'm wondering, she's a smart lady. So I'm thinking about, a way she can get back into the workforce, and she's been staying home with the young kids, but they're getting old enough where she really needs something to do. And so if there's a franchise thing that fits her, and then really, back on myself, I'm starting to get the itch again I kind of like building companies. And so I'm getting the itch again to start something up.
Okay.
But that's something I think we could have a pretty cool conversation about. If that's something that you like having a conversation about.
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about stuff like that, just learning, what it is you're on both cases, you and your wife.
Yeah. And we're
something I can do to help. I'd be happy to help,
Yeah. And we're in a good position where, it's, we've got the money. So it's not the, what do we do with it? Do we,
right.
how do we invest this money? And Matthew's like, you keep putting it to your IRA and let me, put it under management.
I just moved back into the picture. It was
Yeah.
unintentional.
But what? Yeah, I have no idea. And you even mentioned stuff that I'm like, wow, I didn't even know that existed when it comes to franchising. So.
Oh yeah. It's interesting because like I said, I've been in this industry for over 30 years, but I've been doing franchise consulting for almost a year now. It's, prior to that, it was all on the operations and training side. And yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot on the development side of things and brands that I didn't even know existed in industries I didn't know were franchised. And it's just, I was like, wow. So I can imagine.
Yeah, and it's good to know that you've been a franchisee and have gone through the ups and downs. I think that gives you some credibility as a consultant.
Well, I hope so. I think it does. So, I mean, I just want to help people. I just want to, but it's like anything else. They got to want they got to want the help, right? So, and if somebody does, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. Cool. I actually have to. Gosh, it's 5:13, huh? Okay.
Yeah,
We'll probably get rolling, but
Right.
hey, great success. Super happy we did this. We're gonna have a follow-up with some polling posts on the LinkedIn group to kind of just keep that conversation going. Add everybody to our short list. Then we'll work on having again, looking at really in person would be great too. We can totally do that, a social thing, another one of these. So, hey, Dave, at least we've connected twice this year. Let's make it 3 though.
It works. Yeah.
Yeah, and seriously, either you guys want to have a, I guess I'll call it a one-to-one.
Yeah.
Want to get together for a lunch or coffee? Let me know, man.
I'll be in touch,
Happy-
sir. We'll
happy-
get together.
Happy to do so.
That's great. Well,
All
thank
right.
everybody for joining, and Brian, thanks for joining, man.
You guys.
Awesome. And thank you, Dave, lastly. So, have a good rest of your night then.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye.